welcome to another episode of Hammer and Vajra. This time I am going to talk about the book a month, 12 book challenge. It's sort of a New Year's resolution concept. Happy New Year to a majority of you who are listening today. I may be a little late by the time this is uploaded, but it's never too late to start a new habit. So basically, I recently saw a video where Felix Kjellberg, or PewDiePie as some people know him, was proposing a book a month challenge for reading philosophy to stimulate real change and growth in the new year. I would highly suggest you guys check out his video. I think it's a great idea, and similar to the challenge that of the Wild Hunt challenge that with similar energy that Marcus Follin, the golden one, has proposed every year he does one. While I'm all for doing New Year's challenges and or New Year's resolutions, a Sumbel or Blót for New Year's resolution, I think having a structured program can be transformative well. Using these books that I'm going to recommend works well with my 3-hour-a-day program. The 3-hour-a-day program is having something physical activity for 1 hour, a reading for 1 hour, something either spiritual or something constructive, and then philosophical or something that is good for creativity or for development. And the last one would be something spiritual directly with either prayer or meditation or reading spiritual books or watching something regarding your spirituality, but including the prayer and meditation practices for an hour. So it's 3 hours a day. I think that is a well-rounded concept. But with this, I present my 12 recommendations for reading. I very much agree with many of Felix's choices, but I think there might be some overlap with them, but mine are more spiritually focused. I will be recommending some modern authorship, as I think sometimes contemporary interpretation can be a great gateway to reading for spirituality. Starting off by default, I want to recommend my own books. You can choose any of my books to start, and I'll have links and descriptions. My recommendations will play off one another and build upon one another. So if you're going to do 12 books in a row, well, regardless if you do all these 12 books, one book a month, and some of these may be hard to find, you could substitute, they do build off of one another. Going in order down this rabbit hole, one will find themselves going from general European spirituality to Indo-European spirituality and Eurasianism, or Eurasian spirituality, not Eurasianism, and then into the realms of esoteric Odinism and Arya Dharma. This is meant to be a curated journey in itself, so I'm curating this journey for you. These books are not recommended for beginners in these topics. Now for the book list. So I will start off saying Demigod Mentality by Marcus Follin. Not to simp and shill for the golden one, but I have spoken already in the past about his previous book and how it should be a primer for young European adults and how to approach parenting. This is coming from myself, who is a parent. This book goes a step further and works as a compendium covering almost any topic regarding proper traditional, positive, and strength-based philosophical mindsets. It is very Indo-European indeed and worthy of reading. So I love his book. I will say absolutely worth a read. He has small survey points of basically anything that you may find yourself asking for general European spirituality, philosophy, even some politics, and where you stand within history, or where you should stand in some ways. I think it's probably number one gateway book. So this is a book that's not really a book. I'm going to recommend next is Berserk by Kentaro Miura. And this is a series. This series has 43 volumes now. You can read most of it online. And you may be wondering why I'm recommending a manga. And I will say that I don't know what I can say about the series that has already been said. It isn't for the squeamish, but the morals, philosophy, metaphysics, and religious allegory found within, as well as the psychological growth via the struggles of the characters, make it a worthy read for anyone who wants to experience a great story or interact with an alternate Eurasian history that is both fantastical but grounded in some reality. It not only has Berserk influenced many creations that people love today, the Soul series, etc., for video gaming, as well as multiple manga, comics, fan stuff. It also has influenced and had an impact directly on many people spiritually, how they view life, the struggle of life, honor-bound concepts, self-preservation, just light and dark, gray areas of morality versus actual noble acts. It's great. It is probably hands down one of the best series you can read, regardless whether you like manga or Japanese stuff or not. The next book, the third book I'm going to recommend, is Summoning the Gods by Colin Cleary. This is probably my favorite book for understanding the divine, the gods, and monism. It makes a decent comparison of Indo-European philosophy and thought while showing their inner connectivity of divinity. One of the core aspects of this book is his method of taking natural phenomena and breaking them down to metaphysics and maintaining the magical reality of the world itself with direct connections to the gods and ways to mentally and spiritually approach to summoning the divine in your daily life. Going back to the book, there might be a few things that I have changed my mindset on and don't fully align with now, but as an initial stepping stone into paganism and esoteric thought, this work is crucial. It's very hard to find a copy nowadays. Good luck. That is Summoning the Gods by Colin Cleary. I will say that it is definitely a way to look at things in a non-atheistic way, but embrace the divinity around you, depths of ritual you can do in esotericism, but also just scientific fact and not taking the magic away from what you see in the physical realm and the biological realm that is being described through science or prescribed instead of going down the route of atheism. He connects how spirituality is within everything. It's great. Specifically, he has his thing about Odin and his sacrifice, and I've elaborated upon it a lot, but he's probably one of the founding, Mr. Cleary is one of the founding people who wrote his essay about Odin's sacrifice and what it means. Nextly, for number 4, I'm going to recommend the Poetic Edda and the Havamal. I read the Lee Hollander version. There's various different versions. I don't recommend the version from Jackson Crawford because he takes away all skaldic poetry, and there's some meanings he makes literal, and they lose greater Indo-European and or Scandinavian skaldic connections to depth of meaning or certain things that are inferred. The Poetic Edda, or sometimes called the Elder Edda, is mostly written down within the Codex Regius, a 12th century manuscript, but it is considered to be poems that have been passed down via oral tradition since much earlier. Most of the author is unknown and is thought to be various authors throughout, but of course a lot of the transcribing people say was from Snorri Thordarson. This Edda is primary source and sacred text of most modern pagan movements and religions. It is broken into various poems, of which the Havamal and the Rigsthula are contained. However, it is the Voluspa which is considered to be pivotal in understanding these beliefs of early Germanic peoples, and it not only tells us of creation of the cosmos, but foretells the future and the rebirth of the world. I will say that the Havamal is really important. The Havamal, which means sayings of the High One, is included in the Codex Regius and the Icelandic Book of Kings. While the Codex Regius is filled with various poems pertaining to the Norse gods, it also contains a lot of euhemerous concepts. That being said, the Havamal is a group of poems that are spiritually contributed to sayings of Odin himself. These poems are broken into different groupings of subjects that provide advice and wisdom for the daily life. To many modern heathens, these poems are considered divine spiritual wisdom. The portion of the Havamal that deals with Odin's sacrifice to his higher self on the world tree, as well as the usage of runes, stands out from the rest of the poems and are often the focus of esoteric and metaphysical philosophies and ritual. Next, I'll talk about, to end that one, I'll just say that the Poetic Edda is a must-have for anyone who's of Germanic faith. But I will say, even if you're not of Germanic faith, understanding the Germanic concepts of Indo-European faith can help broaden and shed light to other Indo-European and pagan, European pagan ideas. Next, I'll recommend number 5, The One-Eyed God, Odin and the Indo-Germanic Manabund by Chris Kershaw. So this book is an in-depth exploration of the All-Father Odin via various primordial and Eurasian aspects. Kershaw focusing particularly on Odin's role in the warrior society, Manabund, or of Indo-European cultures. The highlight of how Odin, the one-eyed guide, was revered as a deity of war, wisdom, and sacrifice, and how these qualities were embodied by the warrior brotherhoods that developed around him. Kershaw analyzed the symbolic and ritual aspects of these warrior groups, highlights how they reflect broader cultural values of honor, loyalty, and martial prowess. The Manabund, or Koryos, were centered around the cult of Odin and his associated characteristics, such as bravery, knowledge, and the pursuit of transcendent wisdom through sacrifice. The book draws direct comparisons between Odin and similar deities in other Indo-European traditions, such as Rudra Shiva. It illustrates the shared mythological themes that existed across various cultures. It is a scholarly book that looks at historical texts, sagas, and archaeological evidence to reconstruct the role of Odin and these warrior bands in shaping the spiritual and social fabric of ancient Germanic world. It can be difficult to read, as it is primarily a scholarly work, and the language and writing style reflects that. However, when absorbed bite by bite, it can help frame an understanding of the divine, Indo-European and Germanic culture, and Odin in a way that broadens one's depth of knowledge and method of approach. Unfortunately, the book is difficult to find anymore. You may have to use online resources. You know what that means, and or fork out a lot of money. I paid about $50 for my copy. There are versions online you can get for less if you know what I mean. But otherwise, I would say, hands down, worthy of having book. I go back to it all the time and relearn things I didn't realize I missed. It's very, very highly recommended. Another highly recommended book in the same vein is The Northern Dawn, A History of Reawakening of Germanic Spirit, From the Twilight of the Gods to the Sun at Midnight by Stephen Flowers. Dr. Flowers' book, The Northern Dawn, is one of the core books for anyone looking into Germanic-based spirituality. In my opinion, it is a must-read. It is a book that those who know me will recognize because of the amount of times I have recommended it. I recommend this book all the time. I have summarized the book below based on its own description, which is spot on for what the book is about. This is a description on Amazon, but it's pretty great. Just as other ethnicities show a healthy desire to reconnect to their indigenous past, the revival of Germanic culture appeals to the people of Europe, of European descent, who feel cut off from their deepest ancestral roots. Dr. Flowers defines what constitutes the Germanic tradition and explains this tradition was fragmented and submerged with the coming of Christianity to the Goths, the Franks, the Anglo-Saxons, and the Scandinavians. More importantly, he shows how the northern spirit survived in myriad and sometimes surprising places, from literary works such as Beowulf and the Nibelungenlied to the teachings of Christian mystics like Meister Eckhart, and in the religious, political, and legal institutions of medieval England, Iceland, and Scandinavia. I will say the Golden One did a good review of this as well, and you can read his full review on his website. In general, I think this is an amazing book. It definitely shows that connection from Christianity coming in and how paganism and Germanic faith ended up adapting to Christianity and Germanicized the Christianity in such a way that we don't actually fully understand on a daily basis how much little reverse engineering you actually need to do, and how much Germanic and also Celtic paganism, it continued and existed within the Christian ideas. On the same vein, going down the same line, I'm going to talk about number 7, which is Galt's Descendants, Gothic Religion and Culture in Germania by Alfred Avery. Alfred Avery is a really good writer. I will say he's probably one of my favorites. He has a lot of books about the Goths. He has a lot of Theodish style writings. He has ritual books. He's a musician. You should check out his stuff, especially if you're into Gothic paganism or more in-depth Germanic looks of paganism that aren't just from the Scandinavian side of the house. I'm also going to read his Amazon page as the review, because honestly, it's good enough. Galt's Descendants, Gothic Religion and Culture in Germania, explores the religion and culture of the Goths and the Gothic influence on other Germanic tribes. Some of the topics examined include the gods and goddesses of the Goths, the ritual and magic of the Goths, Galt, the founding father of the Goths and God, the founding father God, he's Odin, Galt is Odin, his surviving myth and his cult of sacral kinship and kingship, the various influences that contributed to the synthesis of Gothic religion and culture, the nature of Gothic Christianity and survivals of Gothic heathenry in Christian times, how the migration age layer of Germanic mythology differs from the more well-known Viking age layer of Germanic mythology, how the Goths contributed to Germanic mystical and religious concepts preserved in the Eddas, such as the difference between the Aesir and the Vanir gods, the substantial influence of the Goths on the legend and poetry of the rest of the Germanic world, especially in the Viking Age Scandinavia and Anglo-Saxon England. I will say this is an amazing book, and some of his work is the reason why I started my side project and my upcoming book called Will of Galt. Will of Galt is a focus on a more pan-Germanic connected religion and origins of Germanic heathenism in a way that can be usable without having the constant Norse versus the Anglo-Saxons versus the continental Germanics versus the Goths and the Kievan Rus, etc., but actually boils it down to the core Germanic faith that they all have interconnected. Continuing on this aspect, but a little more esoteric, number 8, I have The Religion of the Aryo-Germanic Folk by Guido von List. This work explores the ancient spiritual beliefs and practices of the Germanic people using occult and Ariosophy inspired understandings that were founded upon Indo-European studies, which he refers to as, or he being Mr. von List, or Meister von List, as some people say, he refers to as the Aryo-Germanic folk. Von List's goals are to reconstruct and revive the religious traditions while drawing on sources from mythology, folklore, and language. The book delves into the concept of primal, pre-Christian religion based on nature worship, ancestral reverence, and the veneration of Indo-European gods and spirits via primarily Germanic focus. Von List emphasizes the importance of understanding the cosmic order and the role of the divine in the natural world, central to the worldview of the Germanic Aryo-Germanic folk. And this isn't an Amazon reading this time. This is my review. He puts forth a call for cultural and spiritual renewal and urges modern Europeans to connect with their ancient heritage and traditions. While I honestly don't agree with much of the depictions of runes, and I feel his usage of them is spot on, and he helped further the revival and interest in Germanic and Indo-European cultures. While his work was co-opted and politicized, much like the philosophy of Nietzsche, both of them predated the National Socialist movement, and their teachings are rather apolitical, regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on. Much of Guido's writings do lean towards a syncretic Christo-paganism. However, I feel that this is actually due to similarities and recognition of Platonist and Germanic theology that resides in certain forms of Christianity. Taking a non-political look at his books might be worth your time. I think Mr. Flowers is the one who presented this book for much of Von List's books, and I think they're worthy of picking up and reading. Number 9, I'm going to suggest the Classical Hinduism by A.L. Basham. In this book, Basham comprehensively introduces the key aspects of Indic faith as it evolves from the ancient traditions into a classical form. This work explores the religious, philosophical, and cultural practices that come to define Hinduism, focusing on its development from the Vedic period through the Upanishads, epics like Mahabharata and Ramayana, and the rise of various schools of thought. Basham covers concepts of dharma, moral order, karma, action and its consequences, samsara, cycles of rebirth, and moksha, liberation, highlighting their central role in dharmic faith. He also examines the gods of the Vedic pantheon, the role of ritual, the caste system, and the rise of important philosophical schools, including Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, and Yogas. Basham presents the Vedic faith as a deeply intertwined system of belief, culture, and social structure that shaped the lives of millions. His book covers the historical insights and with a clear explanation of ritual practices and spiritual ideas that define classical Hinduism. I think if you already have a general understanding of Vedic faith and you have a general understanding of Indo-European concepts, specifically not to shill, but of my own books, using Mr. Basham's book, I think you can delve even deeper into the depth and actually have sort of a direct key to understanding. It's not a long book, but it has a lot of very good antidotes and answers for questions one may have regarding the workings and understandings of the philosophy and history of Vedic faith. For number 10, I'm going to do the Introduction to Tantra by Lama Yeshe. Lama Yeshe presents a concise and accessible guide to the principles and practices of Tantric Buddhism within Vajrayana. This book is an overview of the core concepts of Tantra, explaining its approach to transforming ordinary experiences into a path of spiritual awakening. Yeshe emphasizes the importance of Tantra as a method for achieving enlightenment more quickly and efficiently by utilizing the energy of the body, speech, and mind. The book describes how tantric practices such as visualization, mantra recitation, and yidam practices, meditation on deities, are used to harness the mind's potential and dissolve ordinary dualistic perceptions. He also clarifies the relation between Tantra and the more common Buddhist practice of renunciation, compassion, and wisdom. Lama Yeshe also stresses the need for a qualified teacher, guru, to guide the practitioner in advanced methods, as the techniques are not to be approached casually, but with respect and understanding. The book aims to semi-simplify Tantra and make it accessible to those who are ready, while maintaining a focus on transformative power of these practices when properly engaged. If you need an introduction to Vajrayana after you've already understood Buddhism or other Indo-European aspects, I think this book is one of the best ones you can have. Number 11, I'm going to go on Journeys in the Kali Yuga, a pilgrimage from esoteric India to pagan Europe by Aki Sederberg. This is one of the best books I've read. In this book, Aki Sederberg speaks on European paganism as a broken line. Sederberg speaks on his journey to India to become initiated in the Nagababa Sadhana, which through his memoirs, he speaks regarding the methods and taking the Vedic path and bringing the lineage of unbroken Indo-European faith back to the European paganism, but keeping the ethnic flavors of European paganism. His book, I did a full review of on X and also on my Patreon. It's very much worth it. It's a first-person book. I will say it doesn't. I'm not going to give it away, but the conclusions he arrives at are not the conclusions you may think he arrives at regarding us Europeans needing to go to India. More, it's more of a moral lesson of how to connect to the gods in your own culture and where you're at. But he does make these connections within the book, and he does give his story about him going and seeking Agori Babas and having practices with such people and what he learned there. So lastly, I'm going to recommend The Inner Circle and the Kandibok by Paul Wagner. These two works are the most difficult to recommend. If one isn't familiar with Mr. Wagner, he has a bit of a reputation for those who don't actually read his works or who take his semi-tantric usage of World War II, death, and esoteric occult symbolism the wrong way. And instead of embracing their meaning and overcoming it for transformation, both physically and spiritually, they report and deplatform him. He definitely uses a lot of NS symbolism and edgy core ideas in his works, in his post, in his way of speaking. But the idea is almost tantric in nature, in burning away what you're attached to and what you think is scary or evil or right and wrong, and embracing that which actually makes you better and helps you overcome. It is hard thereby to recommend these two books, because they are, one, difficult to purchase now. He may put them back on his store link somewhere, but I haven't seen it. However, if one is in the know and is able to find either of these books, one will find an outline for approaching the training, both physically and spiritually, processing failure and success in one's life, and creative endeavors, as well as the methods to use runic and tantric rituals via mantra, training, and hard work to achieve greatness. However, if these topics or approaches are not your cup of tea, or you cannot find them, I have other transformative authors I will suggest below. And so this is what I'm reading. Reading below is right here. And I'm going to suggest these to you. And these are the other authors that you can see. Because I recommended you 12 authors so far, 12 books. And I will say there are a few of them that you're going to probably have a hard time finding, unless you have the money or patience. You might not be able to find Mr. Cleary's book very well. You might not be able to find Mr. Kershaw's book very well or very easily. And you will probably have a hard time finding that last recommendation from Mr. Wagner. I will say that other transformative authors I would suggest would be Jacob Grimm, one of the founding fathers of Indo-European and Germanic studies. His scholarly work on Germanic phonology and Teutonic mythology is a great read for anyone who's interested in European heritage and folklore. After that, I will suggest Georges Dumézil and Jean Pavel. Dumézil is another founding father of Indo-European research, and he is one of the first published researchers of comparative mythology. Pavel, who was a student of his, further expounds upon his work, really honing in on Eurasian and European comparative connections. I would suggest easily the Comparative Mythology book by Jean Pavel. I mentioned Paul Wagner above. As mentioned, Paul Wagner was the OPWW, Tribal Writings, Methods of Organization, Self-Implemented Financing, as well as Lifting, Martial Arts, Philosophy, and Esoteric Approaches to Mysticism. There are of a darker occult persuasion, but those that were impactful and inspirational to my work. He's a worthy of read. I think he was a major inspiration to me and the creation of Hammer and Vajra, with both good things and bad things of what I took away from his approach. After that, I will suggest Jack Donovan. Mr. Donovan is much less of a controversial figure than Mr. Wagner, and his books are more easily found on Amazon, though there might be some disagreements between those on the left and right political view with some of his approaches to masculinity. His books are a very good way to apply ancient knowledge and understanding from both a primal masculinity to Indo-European mythology into practical applications and ways to view one's everyday world and self-improvement, especially of those who see the current generational attack on masculinity and want to make efforts to reverse it. So if you want to make efforts to reverse the war on masculinity that has been going on, I would suggest Mr. Wagner and Mr. Donovan's books. I also recommend Julius Evola. Speaking of controversial authors, those who can be easily obtained, however, Evola is both controversial for his support of nationalism and pagan imperialism, as well as his seriousness when approaching the mystical traditions and mixing them within a political framework. There's a wealth of good information and insight in his works, though his writing style may put some off. Julius Evola, I think a lot of people know him, especially people on the conservative or right-wing style. People may not like him because of his sympathies towards nationalism on either side, but a lot of his writings, even if you take the politics away, are very much core metaphysical and understandings of mystical traditions and initiated religions. I will suggest, of course, Edred Thorson or Stephen Flowers. Though I have mentioned him previously here in this video, I mentioned him. I will say that if one is interested in any aspects of runology, esoteric Celto-Germanic faith, he's like a one-stop shop. Pick up any of his books. This is my suggestion. Lastly, I'm going to recommend Yukio Mishima. Though I cannot vouch for all of his fictional works, his journey and development into the mindset that gave birth to his work Sun and Steel, as well as his fatalism and his striving for greatness in the end, is a great lesson of morality, strength, and experience. Doesn't mean one should emulate him to the fullest degree. He did commit self-deletion, but that he has a lot of views and experiences that one can learn from in reflection. I think he's a great author that one can learn from, and I think even if you're at least experiencing what he went through via your own reflection of what you were going through in life. For fiction, I'm going to give some suggestions. I'm going to shotgun some fiction that I think is both thought-provoking, but grounded in certain traditional worldviews and fantastical challenges with in-depth lore building, and these are worthy of reading in my highest recommendation. I suggest at least the first book of Dune by Frank Herbert, any of the works by Edgar Allan Poe, of course, the works by J.R.R. Tolkien, at least The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, maybe The Silmarillion, or his poems based off of Scandinavian and Norse mythology. The Journey to the West, the Chinese novel, if you can find it in a good version, its connection to mystical Buddhism and or the history of China during the time is pretty awesome. It's a good in-depth discovery for those who want to learn some core Chinese culture, or at least what it used to be. I would also suggest Robert E. Howard's the Conan series, Conan the Barbarian. If you took Lord of the Rings, made it more alternate history and more core masculinity focused, but also people get it wrong. There's a lot of beauty in Conan, not just the gritty violence and the world of Conan's as presented in movies and media, but there's a lot of poetry. There's a lot of Conan figuring out what it means to be a leader, what it means to be a king, what it means to find his path before the gods, what his gods mean to him or what they don't mean to him. There's a lot there, and I think his interaction with other cultures and other people, I think one can actually learn a lot from him. I don't really need to say much about Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time. It's one of the best-selling fantasy novels ever. There's a lot of mythology within it that represents greater mythology in Eurasian tales, and it has pretty decent morals from what I can tell. Any of the works by H.P. Lovecraft, they're hard to understand. I have an upcoming video about H.P. Lovecraft and where I think he was coming from. I would think don't take H.P. Lovecraft for a proper view of religion per se, but definitely take him for a view of humanity and the fear that humanity has within them and the greater chthonic or chthonic and esoteric ideas of fear itself and the darkness. I'll say the majority of fantasy works by Brandon Sanderson are pretty decent. I haven't read all of them, but I've heard good things, though I heard recently he may have dipped into trying to capitulate to certain woke aspects. I would say the Witcher series by Sapkowski is great. I know he is sort of a centralist in his views politically, but when he writes a good moral area where you can see both sides of a story, but also understand the actual goals in mind and the political depth that can be behind motivations, but also the struggles of life and one's objectives and protecting what you love. Also, it's just has some good magic and mythology if you're just into the fantasy aspects and great fights. The Last Kingdom series from Bernard Cornwell, and that is probably my last suggestion. If you've seen the TV series for Last Kingdom on Netflix, it's pretty much similar to that. Goes a lot more in depth, especially on some of the religious aspects of Celtic paganism and the Germanic heathens there, and versus the Christian kings, etc. There's a lot more nuance to the culture too that he suggests. But if you want to read more, it's pretty good. But yeah, I'll thank you for you all for this great last year, and for taking this challenge. Hopefully you if you want to take this challenge of these 12 books, or if you just take any of the books at all. I hope that you have an amazing and productive, blessed new year as you rise to the challenges ahead of you and turn your sacrifices into alchemical gold. And I hope that you take any of your resolutions as serious as you can, specifically if you made them before the gods, and that you use them to the best of your ability to make yourself and those around you better. I very much am grateful for all the support you guys have given me, and I hope you all continue to not just support me, but support yourselves in your spiritual growth, your physical growth, and well-being of your folk, family, and communities. Thank you guys very much. Vajra out.